Okay, who did their homework?
We did last time.
Mike?
For your homework, I had you read a couple things. One of them was Psalm 104, and one of the other was the little sections of Deuteronomy that are put into the mezuzah that is pierced to your doorpost. And I wanted to read those to you. I didn't explain. I'm going to give you another reading tonight, and I'm going to explain why I want you to read it and maybe give you a little teaser so you'll want to read it. Just can't wait to get home and read it. But I'm betting that most of you didn't, so I'm going to read this again.
Calling my slacker?
Yeah. Did you read it, Alan?
No.
Okay.
What are you reading?
I'm reading the two sections of Deuteronomy that are nailed to the doorposts.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. The reference?
Deuteronomy
6, 4 through 9, and Deuteronomy 11, 13 through 21. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These words is Devarim, the door to the house of the Most High, which I am commanding you today, shall be on your heart, and you shall repeat them diligently to your sons, and speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk on the road, when you lie down, when you get up. You shall also tie them as a sign to your hand. They shall be as frontlets on your forehead. You shall also write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And it shall come about, if you listen obediently to my commandments, which I am commanding you today, to love the Lord God and to serve him with all your heart and all your soul, that he will provide rain for your land in its season, the early and the late rain, so that you may gather your grain, your new wine, and your oil. He will also provide grass in your field for your cattle, and you will eat and be satisfied. Beware that your hearts are not easily deceived, and that you do not turn away and serve other gods and worship them. Otherwise, the anger of the Lord will be kindled against you, and he will shut up the skies so that there will be no rain, and the ground will not yield its produce. Then you will quickly perish from the good land which the Lord is giving you. You shall therefore take these words of mine to heart and to soul, and you shall tie them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets on your forehead. You shall also teach them to your sons, speaking of them when you sit in your house, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, so that your days and the days of your sons may be increased on the land which the Lord swore to your fathers to give them, as long as the heavens are above the earth. As we're going through the study tonight, you may hear echoes of those words as we move along, and I'll even, I think, bring them up twice maybe. What I want to do is dive right in to day 6. On day 6, we see man and beast come about. And tonight, I think the theme of tonight will be, excuse me, mankind's role in the creation. Relationships. The relationship of man to the created and the relationship of man to the creator. His purpose, the way he interacts with those things, and boundaries, limitations in behavior or movement. I want to propose and then further develop the idea that the purpose of man is to be the connector between the heavens and the earth, the attacher of those two things. And I think we'll see that pretty clearly. I don't know that anyone would disagree with me right off the bat on that one. Okay, man's purpose is to be in relationship with the Creator so that he maintains that connection between the upper and the lower, between the heavens and the earth. On the slide that's on your screen right now, I have the same thing I've done for all the days, the 6th letter of the alphabet for day 6, and the picture that I chose is someone hammering a tent stake into the ground, and that is because the Vav, that letter, that 6th letter, is a tent peg, a nail, or a hook. It has this meaning of adding, securing, or connecting things. The Vav is the letter that is attached to the front of words when you want to say and. We've talked about, when we had the bet, the 2nd letter, if you put that one on the front of the word, then you would say in or with. And then we saw last week that the hey, the 5th letter, if you put that on the front of a Hebrew word, then it's the definite article. The vav is stuck onto the front of the word is to say and. So if I wanted to say earth, I would say eretz. If I wanted to say the earth, I would say ha eretz. If I wanted to say and the earth, I would say the ha eretz. All one word. So those get stuck on. They're not separate. Prepositions aren't separate words. So you can see that with the vav being the letter that's stuck on to mean and, that is natural because it's the attacher. It secures two things together. It ands things. And the vav is also a picture of a man. And if you look at that modern vav, you can see it's a picture of a man with his head bowed. Okay, that little thing on top. And so if you will remember when the tabernacle was set up in the wilderness, one of the pieces of that whole assembly was a bunch of tent pegs. They were the vavim, plural for vav, tent pegs. And those attached the cover over the tabernacle, those 4 layers. Those were attached to the earth with vavim. And then the curtain, that white curtain that went around the courtyard on the outside, that was also attached to the earth with the vavim. And I just want you to remember, first of all, picture a bunch of little men with their heads bowed as our tent pegs. And these are what is attaching the cover and the boundary to the earth. And tonight is going to be about coverings and boundaries, limitations. And I want you to remember covering, boundary as we move along. Okay, I need to switch. I'm going to go back here. Okay, there's our chart of 7. So let me go back to the people so I can see them. All right. On our chart of 7s, since tonight is about relationships, I wanted to move through all the 6s that I have circled in red, and then, let's just do that first. On day 6, we're starting at the top of the red box. You have man and beast created or made. And the relationship between those two things is that man will be given dominion over the beast, and also the birds and the fish and everything that moves. But of all the beasts that are made, he is unable to, and this is in the later account in Genesis chapter 2, you'll see that there is none that is a suitable helper for him, for man. And so we need to remember that man is different. Although he shares the sixth day, he shares the sixth with the beast, he is a special creation because not only was he formed from the earth like they were, but then he had the Spirit of God breathed into him. So keep that in mind too. The Spirit breathed into him. Now, if you move down to our sixth spirit, the spirit of knowledge, that is da'at, that's different, and I think I've discussed this once already, that when we think knowledge, that word to us in our culture means intelligence. And that is not really what this da'at, that's not quite it. That doesn't really nail the meaning. And I think what I'm going to do is as we move in the future, when we get to the seven spirits, I am going to have you memorize them by their Hebrew words, and I'm going to get rid of those English words. So that instead of being confused when it says wisdom and attaching your cultural meaning of wisdom to that, all you'll do is see kokmah, and you will think Hebrew about that and not get so confused. So on this day 6 of creation, you see that man is given this spirit of knowledge. The spirit of knowledge is it's like this intimate knowing something. Man is going to name the creatures. He's going to look at the creatures who are brought before him and almost look into see the essence of its soul and give it its name. And he does the same when Eve is in front of him. He looks there and he says, flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone, and knows her. And later he will know her intimately, but this know isn't just a carnal type of know. It's like a deep, sacrificial, love unto death type of idea. Like a willingness to take the place of someone else, take their suffering and take their judgment, like our Messiah did for us. And when the thing happens in the garden and things go badly, you see that Adam, instead of knowing his wife and covering her from judgment and suffering, he stands back and points the finger at her, which was a failure. That was a break in the relationship between man and woman that still gives us trouble to this day. So that idea of covering, dying for someone, you move into the sixth Moedim, the sixth feast, and you have the Day of Atonement, or the Day of Covering, a Yom Kippur. And that word Kippur, which we translate as atonement, that means to cover, make atonement. It also means, interestingly enough, to cover with pitch. And when Noah is told to build the ark, he's told to kafar the ark, to cover it with pitch. So if you think of, what we as churched people understand as atonement and the sacrifice of the Messiah, and then we understand that Noah kafared or covered the ark, we can see that there is a covering in between the judgment that's happening outside of the ark and those that are preserved within the ark. There's a covering between that. They're being covered from judgment. This word pops up again, and it is translated as appease. Appease, like, what's another word for appease? I don't want them to think I'm talking about carrots and peas.
Appeasement against Satan.
Appeasement, yes. In the Jacob and Esau story, when Jacob is coming back into the land and he's about to encounter Esau, remember how he divides his family into two camps, and he sends all the gifts ahead of him, the flocks that he's giving to Esau. He says, I will first appease him. Jacob says, I will first appease him, Esau, by sending a gift ahead of me. After that, I will meet him. Perhaps he will accept me. Another word for appease is cover, and the word for gift is mikah. That's an offering. That's the word used for offering. So another way to look at this, and I'll say it again, I'm just going to substitute those two words. Think about God saying this to mankind. I will first cover him by sending an offering ahead of me, his son. After that, I will meet him. Perhaps he will accept me. That's a very gentle God right there, gentle and patient. Okay, now I probably should leave this up big still. I'm going to now look at the relationship between the 6 and the 2 over there. Okay, and we'll start here at the bottom with the letters to the assemblies of Philadelphia and Smyrna. Okay, now in your letters to the assemblies in Revelation, the letters have a format to them. You've noticed this, that he introduces himself and he identifies himself in a certain way, and he has points of correction, and he has points of encouragement about things that they're doing well, and then each letter ends with he who has an ear, let him hear, and talks about the overcomer in each one. And you probably have noticed before that 2 of the assemblies didn't do anything wrong. Okay? There was no fault found with the 6th and the 2nd, Philadelphia and Smyrna. Now, if you look at the feast days, the 6th and 2nd feast days, you might get an idea or why it's the 2nd and the 6th that where no fault is found. Because with this one, you have the covering, the atonement, covering the sin. And with the second one, you've removed the leaven from the house. No fault is found. So I wanted you to start just getting a little bit of practice with how these things are laid out and what there is to learn there about the design and how incredible it is. If you move up, and how important it is to know your appointed times. Because as we get to the letters, you've noticed I've stopped calling these the churches. I'm calling them the assemblies. Okay, and it is the 6th assembly, appointed time, the 6th Moedim, where no fault is found, and it's the 2nd one, where no fault is. They're assemblies. Okay, and this might stretch you a little bit, but when we get to those letters, I don't want you to think about them as memos sent to churches. Like one was sent to Radiant, and one was sent to the Southern Baptists, and I don't want you to think about them like that. I want you to think about these letters have to do with the 7 assemblies, the 7 times when Israel assembles as a whole.
Is there anyone who does not have a clear understanding of why Angela is connecting the 6th and the 2nd? Do you understand that connection? Why she has circled the 2nd in the series?
The menorah.
Where is it?
In that
Right
cubby.
below you.
Okay. The reason why I'm connecting the 6th and the 2nd is because they come out of the same place on the stem of the menorah. We connect the 1st with the 7th, the 2nd with the 6th, the 3rd with the 5th, because they share that spot.
And you'll also find when you do connect, in a series of 7, when you do connect the opposite ends of the spectrum, you see things are connected.
There's something that matches. There's a relationship between the two. Okay, moving up, we talked about the spirit of knowledge, the sixth one, and that's a knowing, a intimate connection, and I wanted to contrast that with the thing that we do not want to hear, which is, I do not know you. That is, I think, a fear that a lot of us have and that we probably should have. And then you have, on the other side, you have the spirit of understanding. And that one has to do with discernment, distinguishing the thing that doesn't belong. And that helps you remember that it goes with leaven, because that's when we go through our house and pull out the thing that doesn't belong. And so a lot of times when you're going to see, you'll see knowledge and understanding coupled in places. And we'll do that when we get to the spirit, the seven spirits. We will further explore the relationship between mankind and the expanse that is in between the upper and lower waters as we go along with the study tonight. We're going to move to, I'm already there. We're going to talk about some verbs. Do you want me to leave that one up?
Yeah.
Okay, there's some pretty tiny little, should I go back and see if anybody has, did anybody want to say anything before I do the verbs? Because I'm going to not be able to see you on the screen for a few. No. Okay. Okay, if I said to you that God didn't create the beasts, what would you say?
That's wrong.
Well, that'd be interesting. Show
Is
me
that what
where.
you're saying?
Yeah.
Are you saying it?
Yeah,
Okay. It
You
would
better
have to,
explain it.
I'm getting some looks.
it would have to do with the Hebrew word that is being utilized, correct?
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and that was kind of just to get your attention, because
It works.
I did. And I think that when we think of creation, that God created everything. He created the water, and he created the lights, and he created the plants, and he created man, and he created the beasts and the birds, and yes, God is the originator. He is the creator of everything. But in the language, when it is giving this account of the 7 days, that word is used sparingly. There are some other words that are used too, and I just wanted you to be aware of that. I know some people will hang their theology or their creation doctrine on things that do not line up with the verbs used. So if you're going to go down that path, at least be aware that there are different verbs used. And I'm going to talk about 4 of them right now. The first is bara, to create, and it has this connotation of bringing into existence, like something from nothing. And when this word is used in the Bible, it's almost exclusively God doing the creating. There are a few exceptions, and 2 of them are bad. Eli's and his sons, when they are making themselves fat off by taking the choicest offerings, that making fat is a bara, create word. And then in Ezekiel, when he is talking about the 2 sisters, what were their names, Alan?
Aholama and Aholabama or something like that.
I don't remember.
There
Thank
you go.
you.
I'm saying that, Tracy.
Yeah, she knows. When he dispatches, when an army dispatches their swords against the 2 sisters, that dispatches their swords, that's a create word. So it's probably best to just keep God as the one who does the bara'ing. But the next one, and then the things that are created, once you get past the first sentence of the Bible where it said, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, that's created. But when you get down to the specific things on the specific days, it's the fish and the birds and the tanin, which is the sea monsters, that they're separated out for some reason. And then man is created. That's it. When you get to the Sabbath, he doesn't create the Sabbath, but when he's describing the Sabbath, he says, it's the day that God rested from all that he had created and made, the next verb. So that one's there twice. That's why I have Sabbath in green and in orange. Okay, so the orange one, the asa, is to make or do or produce, appoint, put in order. It's almost, I was trying to understand this, and this is the best I can do for you. I hope it's not misleading. If I were to take clay and turn it into a pot, I could take clay and make a pot out of the clay. I've taken something and I've made something else. I cannot create the clay, but I can use it to make the pot. So there's almost this idea of doing something with something that's already there. And this one is used for the rakia, that expanse between the upper and the lower waters. It's used for the fruit, and it's used for the sun and the moon, the two great lights. He made the two great lights. I don't think it's connected to stars. I looked at that again, and when we looked at that first, I remember it saying he made the stars also. He made the stars also. So I went and looked it up. It doesn't say that. It just says the stars also. It doesn't say made. So and then he made the beasts. Isn't that odd that he created the fish and the birds, but he made the beasts? And then man is both created and made. That's why he's in green and in orange. And then again on the Sabbath, he says he rested from all he created and made, and that's why that's in both colors. This making thing, we were talking about boundaries, limitations to someone's duties, and I think with this one we see, with this verb, we see man stepping over his boundary, that what he was supposed to do. Because after the first dozen times you see that word asa, it's in relation to God making the creation. And then after that, you see it, and it says in the phrase, the serpent was craftier than any beast God had made. And then it goes bad. Because the next time you see it, Adam and Eve have made aprons out of fig leaves. And then God says to Eve, "What have you done? What have you made?" Same word. And then God says to the serpent, "Cursed are you because of what you have done, made." And then God makes them garments of skin. And that word for skin is or, which is a sound alike to the word for light, or, but spelled different. And that's where they get the idea that we were clothed in light, and then after that, clothed in skin, like we see now. And then the next time after that is God saying to Cain, after he's killed his brother, "What have you done, made?" So that one goes downhill. This badal word, divide, he has divided, I hope you can tell the difference between the purple and the blue. Well, you're colorblind. Okay, he divides the light from the darkness. He divides the upper waters from the lower waters. And then when you get to day 4, I put lights in purple because at this point, the lights are given the task to divide the day and night. So God's letting something else do the dividing, starting there. And then I put Sabbath in purple too because it doesn't use that word and say that it's divided, but that day is set apart from the other days. And so that idea of division is there. And then the last verb I wanted to point out was kara, which means to call or proclaim or be named. It's important to remember all those aspects of call, especially with something I'm going to link you to after the study tonight if you want to do some really intense reading. God calls the light day and the darkness night. He calls the rakia the heavens. He calls the dry land earth and the gathered waters seas. And then on day 6, this task gets delegated to man, who then names or karas the beasts. Okay. Can I take this from being big? Okay. I want to go back to the people, and I'm just going to leave that up there, and I'm going to talk about connections between some of these things, and I want you to consider where or what they were created from. The plants are revealed from the ground. It doesn't say created, doesn't say made. It says the ground reveals the plants. But plants are bound to the ground. They can't walk around. They're rooted in. The fish, they're produced in the water, and they're bound to the water. They can move within it, but they can't move out of the water. The birds so far are the most mobile. They have the most freedom. Birds can float on the water. They can walk on the land. They can fly through the air. They get to do the flying thing that we don't get to do. So in a physical sense, they're the freest of the creatures. The animals are made out of the earth, but not like the plants where they're rooted in place. They get to move about on the earth. Man is also made from the earth and is also able to walk around on the earth like the animals. But remember, that special thing about him was God breathed the Spirit into him. So spiritually now, man is that connector between earth and spirit. He's the connector between the lower and the upper. He is bound to the earth by his flesh, but when his soul is separated from his flesh, we call that death, then he ascends, like the birds. So it's almost like the birds may have the physical freedom that we don't, but man is a special creature because spiritually there's that peace to him. I just wanted to point out one more thing before we move on, and that was what happens when you exceed the boundaries. Remember that the serpent exceeded his boundaries. He tried to ascend to a position that wasn't his. And when he was cursed, what happened to him? He was bound even more closely to the earth. Now he will crawl on his belly. Okay? He'll probably have the least freedom of all the creatures. He's bound to the earth. He will eat dust. So he gets put down.
What about like arboreal snakes, water snakes? That'd be a smarty face. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. Do you want to take a moment for questions?
Yes, I do.
Ask the people online.
Does anyone online have a question or comment that they want to make? Tracy.
The way you said that just made me think about he who exalts himself will be humbled. So it's like he physically gave us an example of, I will put you down as low as you can possibly go if you elevate yourself up like that.
Nice.
Anybody in the room want to say anything? Okay. All right, you're free to go to the next section.
Okay, let's move to.
Hey, Angela.
Oh, yes, Jimmy.
Yeah, the serpent got put down, but you see that at the end of time, he's become a dragon. And in every culture in the world, whether it's China or England, George slaying the dragon or what have you, they can fly and breathe fire. So it's Native American. Anywhere you go, you know about dragons. They used to exist. And it seems like Satan has regathered his ability to, after being put down into the dust, to be able to expand himself.
He's found some wings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does he gather that after he's been cursed?
That's the gospel truth right there. I make a joke.
Alan's over there.
Getting our attention.
Yeah. Thank you, Jimmy. Okay, the text of day 6. It says, this is the first part. Then God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth after their kind. And it was so. God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps on the ground after its kind. And God saw that it was good. Notice the repetition there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there are boundaries after your kind. You don't mix it. You can interbreed dogs, but you can't breed a dog with a cat. There's always been boundaries. It's exceeding those boundaries that causes problems. Okay? Yes.
So it was Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
Yes.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you for clarifying that. With all the confusion going on nowadays, somebody needed to say it, right? Okay. Yes.
I might have a question for day 6 when Eloine, when she's saying in day 6, she automatically also ties the part from the substance of Adam Elohim fashions a woman who is also flesh. So she ties chapter 2, that section from man, with chapter 1 of the creation of, right?
Yes.
Does she have a reason for that? Or?
I think I'll wait and I'll address it, but I don't know if I'll answer your question, but I will go there a little bit. Okay, the next piece of this is, then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. And God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them.
Explain that.
No. No, I'm not going to. Yes, we do have a pronoun mashup, which.
Yeah.
And we are going to see that they're also eating only plants. And it's almost like in these modern days, more and more people are vegetarians and going by they instead of he or she. To me, it seems like, you can't imitate this without without God.
Right.
You can't just pretend to try and make things go back to the beginning, but not acknowledge the one who created it all. Thank you, Carla.
Yeah.
Carla's on board with that. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, I'm not going to get into that. I don't know. Why don't you answer
What
it
was
for
the
us?
question, Lou?
He wanted me to explain that, and I think what he's
Explain
talking
what?
about is the.
Well,
Talking
it
about
says,
God said, let us.
No,
No.
God said he created him, male and female. Him.
male and female.
Oh, that just means he's androgynous,
What's that mean?
both male and female.
Okay,
Yeah.
within man was woman, and woman was separated. It's that 1-2-1 pattern. You had mankind created, both, and then he didn't. And then what I think might be misleading for people is they think that he put Adam, to sleep and then took a rib out and made a woman out of the rib. And that's not what it says. It says a side. And so if anything, I want you to picture Siamese twins when he says man. Here was man, that's a different word. When he says male, here's male and here's man. Here's male, here's female. He divides them, they're one, he divides them into two, brings them back together as one, and they multiply. Does that make
I
sense?
think it's a good way to look at it. I agree with that. And I think it's also important to consider, like she said, that it is not a rib, but a whole side is what the Hebrew says. And that, you heard the expression that behind every man is a good woman or something like that. I think that's literally true.
Behind every good man is a good woman.
You could say it that way if you want. Yeah, it's all the same thing. The issue is that in every man, there used to be a woman as well. That sounds really weird, and I don't know that you could ever prove that, but that's especially true in mystical type of teachings of Judaism, is that when God created man, he was part woman. He had the female characteristics inside of him. They were separated into two separate beings, and then that's why a man is not complete without a woman. She has those spiritual elements where he is more driven by flesh. She has those emotional elements where he is more driven by reason and logic, if you've seen that movie As Good as It Gets.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that there are very different parts of a man and a woman, and they used to be combined into one when God created them, but they were separated into unique and individual creatures that were then brought back together in a marriage so that they could be fruitful and multiply and become one again. It's not my opinion. That's in the Judaistic writings. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying it's an interesting piece of potential wisdom.
It's a contemplation by people that have spent a lot longer thinking about this stuff than we have.
Yeah, Lori and then Tammy.
Okay, so I think it's interesting where it says God created him, and then it says male and female because of the Hebrew language. Whenever there's a female and a male present, the male ending of the word in Hebrew will take over. And it doesn't mean there's not a female present. It just means that the male is covering the female and the female is in the male.
That's another good analogy.
The male covering. Yeah.
Tammy?
So John and I watched on like Jack Hibbs. We were watching how he was showing, what was it, John, where the brain, the chemicals from like how AIDS attacks certain, what was that? You probably can explain it better.
Yeah, I don't know
But-
where you're going.
But anyway, they were showing how it attacks certain things, but they were saying also how.
Did you say AIDS is in like HIV?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like how this, I can't remember what that was, but anyways, it attacks. And then they were saying how when a man and a woman are together, they also produce certain things in their body that keep them stronger and keep them together, and they have a bond that is different because it produces certain chemicals. Yeah, that keeps them more one. So what was
That's
it?
interesting.
It just amplifies one another.
Yeah. Hormonal. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
hormonal
very interesting.
thing.
Very interesting. Okay.
And
Good
someone
insights, you got.
online, Tracy.
Alan?
Oh, wait.
Hold on just a
So
sec,
let's go
Jimbo,
Tracy and then
Tracy,
Jimmy.
and then Jimbo.
I was just gonna say to kind of wrap your mind around it spiritually anyway, is like how the woman comes from the man type of thing. Is when Messiah was on the cross and he went into a deep sleep and his people were built from him. His side was pierced. Out came water and blood. We must be born by the water and the blood. And when Eve came from Adam, when God took that piece of his side from him, the Hebrew reads that he built her. And this is the shadow picture that he is the first builder, he is the first architect, and that's why we are called his temple and his body, is that we are being built up in that same way. So we can see, maybe a little bit more clearly what that might look like as far as Adam and Eve and how he was supposed to be this righteous, messianic kind of figure, but he fell, and so we have the Messiah that came and did it the right way.
Jimmy.
Good. Yeah, several of the sages have written that when God spoke to the man, corporate, as Adam and Eve unified, that he spoke to the male side of that person. So the man was more responsible and culpable for, obedience, and it was a little bit easier for the feminine side of him to be tricked by the devil when the devil, said face to face with her after separation, "You'll not surely die." So that Adam, the man, was more responsible and more in trouble after disobedience.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Well, may I say something?
Sure.
I think all this we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and then right in this Bible, it says that when you're married, when you come together, you are what?
Yeah.
One.
You're two, but you're one.
You are one.
Yeah.
One flesh.
This is a way for us to understand that God is one, but there's these different aspects to him. And then, we'd start tripping over, is he three? Is he one? Have you ever been married?
Lord?
Yes, Lori.
It's bringing something to my memory where it says in the Orthodox Jewish Bible when Adam was created that he was created in the image of Elohim. But when Eve came on the scene, she was fashioned by Hashem Elohim. So the way I had always understood this was that here's Adam, and the female and the masculine are in him. And basically Adonai took his hand and pulled Hashem out of Adam and made Eve.
Wow.
Fascinating. That's cool.
That is.
Cool.
Anybody else? This is good. I knew I didn't have to research this section. You guys have got this one. All right. Now, I wanted to, is this the section? In our image. Yeah. I wanted to talk about the word for the in our image. And that word is tselem. And it means to shade, a resemblance, a representative figure. In fact, the word in Hebrew for photograph is tselem. In our image, a tselem, a photograph. Now, I want you to think about the differences between a photograph and the actual thing. Like, let's say you have a photograph of your car, and then you have your car. Now, the photograph is just a representation. It's 2D. You can't open the door, get in that car, and drive it somewhere. The actual car has more dimension to it. And remember that, because now what I want you to do is just look at your hand. Just look at your hand.
Look at your hand.
And I'm going to ask you to picture something. I want you to picture God's hand. Did it look like yours? Did it look like that thing on the Sistine Chapel?
Yeah, likely.
Okay. I want you to, hopefully I can explain this so that it flips in your mind. You make a flip. This is not a hand. God is the one who has a hand. What you have at the end of your arm is a representation, a tselem, an image of a hand. It's there to help you understand about God's hand, but it is just a representation of an actual hand. He's the one with the hand,
Evan has a hand.
the real hand. And Evan's hand is up. What do you have to say, honey?
If an image is a 2D representation of a 3D thing, and this is an image of God's hand, it's 3-dimensional. Does that mean that God's hand is 4-dimensional?
I think there's more than 4 dimensions to God. I've heard there's 10.
It probably isn't a limit to the amount of dimensions.
There probably isn't a limit. And that's something that's hard for us to understand because we're used to 2D, 3D. But what happens when 3D is just an image of
Yeah.
something? How many more dimensions is there to the thing that this is an image of?
Well, image would be one less dimensional thing. It is.
Okay. All right. Theoretically. Okay.
You got a brain right there.
Okay.
You very
Now, I wanted to do that little mind experiment with you because I wanted you to understand that because we're such physical creatures, we just naturally make God in our image. That when we paint pictures of God, like on the Sistine Chapel, we're making God in our image. We're limiting him. We're turning him into a 2D thing, to less than us. And so that is a problem when you try to make an image of God. Carla.
Can you spell that word?
Yes. Well, I can spell my phonetic. It's a Tzadeh Lamed Mem, I believe, but I put T-Z-E-L-E-M.
Thank you.
Zelem. Okay, and we talked a little bit about this reflection and images and distortion of them in that second commandment that says don't engrave an image. Back on day 2, when we had the upper and the lower separated, and we saw how one reflects the other, and I even had that picture of someone putting their finger in the water and causing ripples, and those ripples distort what's up above, and it's no longer reflected accurately. And we talked about how those ripples have grown and grown and grown into this stormy sea of distortion that God will come and calm. And once those waters are calm again, like Yeshua did for a little picture of that on the Sea of Galilee, then those images will more accurately reflect each other again. But I wanted you to consider, because this day 2 was also a reference to the temple or the house, because that letter Bet is the letter for house, and the house is the temple, and this is about a dwelling place, and that when he separated the upper from the lower, what he created was the rakia, or a dwelling place for all the things that move, that we are the dwelling place. That the thing created on day 6, this is a connection between day 6 and day 2. On day 2, he created a dwelling place for the creatures, the rakia, in between the upper and lower. On day 6, he created man, a dwelling place for God. Where does God dwell? In our hearts. So, if he dwells in our hearts, let me ask you this. What were the commandments written on? Tablets of stone. Where were the tablets kept?
Inside the ark.
Inside the ark.
I mean, they're smashed first and then remade.
Yes, inside the ark. Where was the ark kept?
In the Holy of Holies.
And where was that?
In the temple.
In the temple. Where are the commandments written now? On our hearts. Okay? We're the temple. The commandments are inside of us now. We're like a bunch of little temples. Little dwelling places. We're a bunch of little vavims. We're the men with the head bowed that are connecting the upper to the lower. And Tracy, I know I'm about to reference all your stuff here, but you go for it. No.
I was just gonna say, because you're totally just like, you just keep adding to something I wanted to say earlier, is that, so you're talking about how we're made in God's image, and that we're like a representation, and we have this really neat example of this when the Pharisees and whoever they were testing the Messiah with taxes, and they're saying, should we pay taxes or not? And he says, let me see your coin. Whose image and inscription is this? It's Caesar's. Give to Caesar what is Caesar, and to God's what is God. So consider that little coin as an image and inscription of man, whereas we are an image of God with his inscription, his word in our hearts and minds. So that's what makes us different from them.
Very nice. Excellent. And not only are we little individual dwelling places, but we are also living stones that are being built up to make the holy city. And in Revelation, the spiritual temple, the city, the holy city. In Revelation 21, John sees a new heaven and a new earth, the holy city, prepared like a bride coming down from heaven. He hears a loud voice from the throne saying, now God's presence is with his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. If we are the temple, this gives a much deeper meaning to when he says, dwell among men, in the midst of men. In the wilderness, he was in the tabernacle with the camp around him. He was dwelling in the midst of the camp. Once they're in the land, he's in the temple in Jerusalem, dwelling in the midst of them. But now, in the kingdom, he's inside of us. Tracy and Mike have done extensive study into this. They have a series on YouTube called, well, from their website, I think, called The Kingdom of Heaven. And then there's a couple papers that she's written. The one in particular is called Placing the Name. And I'm going to send you guys links to those. And that is going to give you all the verses, all the references. It's going to lay it out, that idea of us being the temple. And this is more important. I know, if you're from the church, oh yeah, we're the temple of God. That's just like this throwaway line. But I wanted you to I wanted to say something maybe a little bit provocative.
Oh
no. You do it all the time.
Okay, Bill.
Oh, yeah, he does that. No, I don't know. With some of you, you're just gonna, huh? But let me just say this. In the Placing the Name study that Tracy does, I would like you to pay particular attention to how many times the word abomination comes up. Because we have a problem. We have a serious problem, and we're coming down to the wire here, and we have got to sort out this problem. It's a physical outlook versus a spiritual outlook. It is really important that we not remain bound to the first 6 days of creation with all the tangible, concrete stuff, that we are able to transition into that seventh day where we refill the spirit. Okay, and if you are ignoring the seventh day, it's like you're with your glasses off. You've got to refill on that day that he has appointed, and that is going to help you to understand and to move beyond that physical outlook, especially when it comes to this end of the age stuff. We have people watching for a physical temple to be built and an actual man to walk in there and to set up a statue or sacrifice a pig. That's a very physical outlook. I'm not saying that wouldn't happen. It's happened before. But what if what happened before was a physical picture of a spiritual thing that is going to happen at the end of the age? And what if we are so focused on the physical thing, waiting for that to happen, that the spiritual thing is happening right now in front of us and we can't even see it?
That's right. Yeah.
It might be that we are already up to our necks in abomination, and that the desolation is well underway.
Yes.
And we can't see it because we are waiting for something physical to happen.
Wait! No, I'm just kidding. I was going to say,
Deuteronomy is full of it, because when I studied over all the abominations and the other.
yeah, that dude Ron and me are on the same page.
Yeah,
But I'm just, I'm making a joke. But I wanted to say, Angela, you're absolutely right, and I have one other little thing that I would add there, and that is, we mentioned this when we have touched on some prophetic ideas before, and that was that you have this history of God giving prophetic utterance to his people and them completely missing the boat. They were expecting something completely different when the Messiah Yeshua showed up, so they missed it. They missed it. What do you think the chances are that all these prophetic utterances regarding the end of days are going to come about, and a whole bunch of people are going to miss it? Why do you think that there is a remnant that is going to be saved? That there is a massive falling away, as
Great
Paul calls it?
deception. Even the elect.
Even the elect, if it were possible, would be deceived. Here's the issue I think you want to consider. It's very possible, I'm not going to say likely, I'm going to say very possible, that what Angela is suggesting it could be true. That we are looking for the Jews to build a third temple, and then some guy's going to make a peace treaty with them for 7.5 years and break that peace treaty in the middle of in the 3.5 year, and then he's going to set up a statue, and it's, dude.
Well, not
that,
only that, but we are looking for revelation in the news.
Yeah.
The news is
That's a great point.
Yes,
we're looking for revelation in the news, which is in the physical realm, and I think you know that the news is fake.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean the mainstream media. Do you think that this conservative media is telling you the truth too?
No.
They're just as partisan. They have every intention of destroying their enemies by twisting, turning, making things sound just the way they want to get you riled up. They're not telling you the truth either, guys.
It's a distraction.
It's a
because
distraction.
if you can get sidetracked by your emotions. Remember what happened to the 10 spies?
Yeah. And I want you to consider, if it is true that you are a temple, and you look at the different times in the Bible that the word abomination is used, and you begin to consider the idea that you are a temple, and that there may already be an abomination on the wing of your temple, what might that be? What might that look like? I think if you do a word study in your Bible about the word abomination and what it refers to, you might have a clearer understanding of the abomination of desolation is everywhere around you.
And you don't have to do a word study. I'm going to send you a link to Tracy's paper called Placing the Name, and it's going to break down abominations for you and the idea of us as the spiritual temple.
And you can really begin to consider, am I waiting for a third temple, or does my temple already have an abomination in it? You might need to think about these things.
Remember that because you say you can see, you are blind.
So read Deuteronomy 27.
Deuteronomy 27, great point.
When Yeshua heals the man born blind and the Pharisees say, "What, are we blind too?" He says, because you say you can see, you are blind. If you right now don't have some doubt that you are not seeing something clearly, then you are saying you can see. And
you know, I think you guys sometimes tell me, and it's a danger for me to get my head inflated. It's like, Alan, you're so good at understanding the Bible and pulling neat things out of it. And Angela gets the same comments from people all over the place. If I'm being honest, and I know she is too, we have to say, we've been studying the Bible for a long, long time. And the longer we keep doing it, the more we realize we know nothing.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely nothing. I feel like I know less and less as I study more and more.
Yeah, I feel
because we realize that there's more and more to know.
Absolutely. Carla?
Well, it is like you were mentioning the Pharisees who were looking for the prophecies to happen, and they were happening right in front of them, and they said it wasn't of God, that Yeshua was not God.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
same thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tracy, just 1 sec. I'm going to ask Gracie, and then, did you want to say something, Gracie?
No, I asked her to repeat.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Tracy.
I was just going to relate it to, us being the temple today and where he places his name. It's in us today, the same way that he did Jerusalem then. So it's the spiritual temple. And in Jeremiah, when he was, prior to the temple destruction, he was saying, will you come and stand in this place that is called by my name and say, we have been delivered to do all of these abominations. And this is exactly what we're doing today.
We're free to do that.
I'm saved. I do, and this is like, now I'm going to stand here and do all these abominations because I've been saved. It's the same thing.
Okay, I'm going to move on because there's another big chunk and that I wanted to get to. Is this the next one? Yeah. Okay, and we're going to finish up the day 6 account. Not talk a whole lot of the things there because I have this extra thing I wanted to talk about. And I can. And God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the sky and over every living thing that moves on earth. Then God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the surface of the earth, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed, it shall be food for you. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the sky, and to everything that moves on earth which has life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. So he's defined food here for man and beast. He has said, he's given mankind the task of being fruitful, multiply, fill, subdue, and rule. And then at the end here he says, God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was the evening, and there was morning, the 6th day. And I wanted to point out that this is different. Until now he has said good. Here it's very good, because all the pieces are in place now. It's like now it's time to start it up and let it go, because everything, the relationships, the boundaries, everything is established, and this is very good. All the pieces are put together. And then this is the 6th day. On the first day you had Yom Echad, and it uses that a little bit different word. Then for the 2nd through the 5th, it says the 2nd day, the 3rd, a 2nd day, a 3rd day, a 4th day, a 5th day. Here it says the 6th day. Okay, something real special about the 6th. Not as special as the 7th day, but the 6th day is taking and leading us into the 7th day, and it's the completion of the work and the creation. I wanted to discuss that other account of the creation of man that you find in Genesis chapter 2, and I wanted to talk about the difference between them, not extensively, just in an overall way, the difference between them. And I also wanted to point out that there is a linguistic cue for this transition between that first account and the second account. When you look at the creation that we've looked at so far, I want you to think of this as an aerial view, that we are looking at the whole scope of the pieces and the parts and their relationships to each other, and that when you get that second account of man in chapter 2, the camera has moved from the drone up here to ground level. Not ground level, but more like this level, about the eye level of a man. Okay, and now we are going to see. We're going to see this from a new angle. Have you ever seen a movie where it shows you an event from one angle and then it shows you the same event from another camera angle? Okay, I think that's kind of what we've got going on here. In the second account, you're going to see the garden. You're going to see rivers, the Adam naming the animals, the creation of Eve, his helper, and the transition for going from the aerial view to the man's eye view, man's level view, is right here. This verse happens in between them. I've skipped over the Sabbath because we're going to cover that next time. It says, this is the toldot of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that Yehovah Elohim made the earth and heaven.
Which verse is that?
2:1. 2:1? I think it's chapter 2, verse 1. No. Someone online here is going to know. No, they don't know.
What verse?
She wants to know what verse this
2,
is.
4.
2:4. We got it. Okay. Now, first of all, notice that heavens and earth is switched to earth and heaven. That's your camera view. You went heavens, earth, and then your camera went down, and now you're earth and heaven. Okay, so you're going to see a new take on those events. Okay, and then this is also the place where this toldot word, this is the generations of heaven and earth. Think of that as the products, like generations, your offspring. This is the results, the products of the heavens and the earth when they were created. And this is the first time you see Yod He Vav He. And this is introduced here. Remember, Elohim is the strict justice, the rules, getting everything in place, in order. Now we have man, and we're going to see things from his point of view. And man is going to require the Yod He Vav He, the name for God that indicates grace and mercy and loving kindness. That's going to be, that man's eye view is going to be the predominant setting for the rest of the Bible, with brief exceptions or moments when the heavenly comes peeking through the fabric of the physical creation, like Jacob's ladder, or when Ezekiel sees the throne of God, the Mount of Transfiguration, Mount Sinai. Okay, these are, it's still going to be from the eyes of a man, but it's just a peek into what's up there. The Psalms, though, I think is the closest we come to another aerial view. And this one, when it comes to the Psalms, it's almost like our day one of creation was almost a clinical, very facts-based. And then the second account of that, not the day one, but the first account of creation. In chapter 2, when we have the second account of creation, that's that man's eye view. I would like to think of those like the first account is like, let's picture World War II. Then the generals are all standing around a table with their little figures and their map, and they're looking over this thing from up above, and they're moving all their little pieces and getting everything in order. Okay, that is our chapter 1 of Genesis. In chapter 2, what we have is like the opening scene for Saving Private Ryan. We are on the ground, we're seeing things go down. Then when we get to the Psalms and some of the language that David uses, it's almost like we've gone back to, you know how David had a heart after God? It's almost like he is speaking again from that aerial view, but not clinically, poetically. And it's beautiful. And that's why I wanted you to read Psalm 104. And that's why I was going to read Psalm 104 to you tonight. But I don't think my throat can do it, and I don't think time will allow. So let's finish up this other piece. I want to talk, right now, I wanted you to, with the 6th, we are on the edge of the 6th day. We're almost at the evening time of the 6th day. 6,000 years of creation. Are you with me on that? Yep. Okay, so here we are at the evening, and I wanted to put up a picture of evening time while I talk about frogs and clay pots. We've talked about boundaries tonight, and I wanted to bring up frogs because frogs push the boundaries. They are an amphibian, which means they have a double life. They're born in water, they leap through the air, and they can live on land. So it's like they're the creature that's trying to be a little bit of everything. Leap through the air like a bird, swim in the water like a fish. Okay? And I found this description of frogs on some scientific website, and this little piece of it struck me. It said, frogs will often eat any living thing that will fit into their mouths. To catch their prey, their sticky tongues will dart from their mouths and pull the prey into the frog's mouth, and it's so fast that the prey doesn't have a chance to escape. A frog's tongue can snap back into its mouth within 15/100ths of a second. Remember the swarms of frogs in Egypt?
Yep.
Remember how they were in places they didn't belong? They're supposed to be in the river. Okay, they were out of bounds. They had exceeded the boundaries. They were infiltrating everything. Remember that word, infiltrator. When he brings this plague upon Egypt, he says, I will smite all thy borders with frogs. Your English translation may say country or nation, but it says borders. He's going to smite their borders with frogs. Okay, and these are the places where they're going to go. Into your house, your dwelling place. Into your bedchamber, Kedar, your inward part. Upon your bed, Mishkab, from Shakab. It's intimate. It's where sexual stuff happens. Into the house of the servants upon thy people, into thine ovens, your tanur, where you cook stuff. This is also the word near, tanur or near, lamp. And into thy kneading troughs, where you make your bread. It's where the dough rises. And that word for kneading trough is used again 4 chapters later when the people take up their kneading troughs. They take their dough out of the kneading trough before it is leavened, and they put their kneading troughs on their shoulders, bound up in their clothes. Why does it say that? Why does it say they put their kneading troughs in their clothes on their shoulders? Let's look at this. When the frogs are removed, they aren't taken away. They just die and they're heaped up into big stinking piles. I want you to keep frogs in mind whenever you hear words spoken against the Most High. In Revelation 16:12, I'm going to read you the 6th bowl. Now, if you look in your Bible, if you want to pull it up right now as we're doing this, you might find this little subheading between verses 12 and 13. Get rid of it. It doesn't belong there. We don't switch from the 6th bowl to Armageddon. This is all the 6th bowl. That makes you think we've changed scenes, and we haven't. I'm going to read it to you without that splitter in there. The 6th angel poured out his bowl on the great river, the Euphrates, and its water was dried up so the way could be prepared for the kings from the east. First of all, if you're thinking physically, armies don't have any problem crossing rivers nowadays. Okay, that's not what this is about. That great river Euphrates is something else. It's connected to this, and we'll get there eventually, I hope. And I saw, still a 6th bowl, and I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, 3 unclean spirits like frogs. For they are the spirits of demons performing signs which go out to the kings of the entire world to gather them together for war on the great day of God, the Almighty. Behold, I am coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake and keeps his clothes, so that he will not walk about naked and the people will not see his shame. He's coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake and keeps his clothes. Okay, like a thief. Don't for one... Okay. Nowadays, when you think of thief, there's this thing that comes with it where you think it's a sneaky thing, like a cat burglar. Like God's going to come back and he's going to sneak a bunch of people away, and people they're just going to notice all of a sudden that you're gone. No. When this is written, thieves don't work that way. Thieves are raiding bands. They come in with loud noise. They crash through the house. They take what they want and probably kill you in the process. This is like home invasion type of thieving. And that fits with what the rest of the Bible says about his return. The sound of the trumpet, the loud voice, the day of trumpets. Okay, that's when he's returning. It will be a noisy day full of rapid, furious movement. Okay? In Leviticus, and I'll wrap up with this. In Leviticus, it gives instructions for how to deal with the creatures that swarm on the land, like the frogs that swarmed on the land in Egypt. And it says, if you touch a dead one, you are unclean until evening. Leviticus 11:34. That if one falls into a clay pot or an oven, that clay pot or oven must be smashed. You ever heard that expression that we are jars of clay? Okay. The rules are a little different for garments. A garment can be immersed in water, and then at evening, it's clean. Blessed is the one who stays awake and keeps his clothes. We're right at the edge of the evening of the 6th day. That's the moment that everyone and everything has been waiting for 6,000 years. And while we may lament that this might be happening right now, really, let's be excited because everybody wanted to see this. And you might think sometimes about, when I get to the kingdom, I really want to talk to Yeshua, and I want to visit with Moses, and I want to ask Rachel this question. And consider that if you endure and you make it to the end, that you might have quite a few people that actually want to visit with you. So I would encourage you, if you did not read Psalm 104, I want you to read it. And I want you to look for the creation elements of light, darkness, waters, plant, fruit. Look for the creation themes of resurrection, food, garments, boundaries, and laboring until evening. And look for the things from what we read that goes on the mezuzah about rain and food and grain and oil and grass in the field for your cattle. And then I want to also encourage you to read 2 Peter. And in 2 Peter, did anyone, before I do this, let's see if anyone has a comment, a question, need me to repeat something I said, because some of you are writing really quickly.
Lori, go ahead.
Well, I find it really interesting what you just said about the frogs.
I saw you.
Being connected to sexual sin, because the Egyptian frog goddess Heket was the goddess of lust.
What?
Yeah, her name, its name, whatever you want to call it, it's Heket is the name, and it's a lustful spirit.
So, adultery and
it's kind of what you were saying.
You know,
they go into your bed.
2, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which is really disturbing about the beast and the false prophet having frogs then come out of their mouth, because they're going to be known as the one who is Torahless.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. I know. This has been disturbing at moments for me this week, just researching it and going, ooh, and then realizing we're further along than I thought. You know, I didn't see that coming. And so does anyone else have something for you? Okay. For your homework, you remember what I said about the aerial view and the ground level view? Okay, Revelation is the aerial view of the end. It shows you all the pieces and parts. There are pieces from the prophets, there are pieces from the Torah, and these all are just coming together. Like it's the grand central station of prophecy all coming together. And that's why it's so difficult to understand, because a lot of people went there first before they did their Torah and their prophets and their writings. And that made it very confusing, because now there's a whole bunch of stuff you got to erase that you thought was solid. Now, for your homework, Revelation is the aerial view. I want you to look at a book that I think is the ground level view. And it's a little disturbing because it's closer than you think, and the infiltrators are not as far as you think from you. It's 2 Peter. You are going to find, I'm going to list off some of the things you're going to find in 2 Peter. You'll see witnesses. You'll see overcoming, an earthly dwelling, lamps and lights, false prophets, judgment by water and fire, and preservation. You'll see the despising of authority, creatures of instinct, beasts to be captured or killed. You'll see them reveling in the daytime, speaking arrogant words, distorting scripture. This is the same book where it's going to say 1 day is as 1,000 years. And this book also says he's coming like a thief.